Right, we are live. We are live. We are live. Sorry about the delay, guys. I'm just sort of a bit all over the place with obviously the Euros and everything. So I apologize for a bit of the mix-up. Hey, guys, it's Old Man G here, back again. Another late stream, and I'm joined by the amazing Tom, who's has obviously been great when it comes to journalist integrity, when it comes to United and other teams. Thank you for joining on this late Saturday night, Tom. Buddy, Tom, how are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing quite well. Hope yourself is doing well as well, G. And Euros has been quite entertaining. To be fair, from
Yes.
what we always say about international football, it's not been a bad tournament to be fair, and hopefully it livens up a bit more when we get to the knockout stages eventually. But yeah, I hope everyone's having a good weekend, and we'll talk some Man United.
I mean, before we get into it, obviously, guys, if you need to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio, follow us on Twitter, and smash the notification button, etc., etc. It all does go a long way to us to show. Before we get into it, guys, Tom, you've got to be honest with me. How close were the United Southgate links? Because from the football that I've watched, I'm glad that he's nowhere near Manchester United. Were Ineos really serious? Were they really serious about hiring Gareth Southgate to be Manchester United manager? Because I just don't want to believe that they were.
The only reason that they was ever going to replace Erik Ten Hag was because they felt that a manager or a coach out there had either done better than him with lesser resources or in a more poor environment than what he's got, or they're on the set. They're just a better coach than him. Period, and they've won maybe more in the game or whatever. That was the only credential as to what they was using as a guide stick to say if we keep Ten Hag or not. Gareth Southgate, for all the links that were put out there, it was because he has a personal connection to Dan Ashworth, because they are good friends from the FA, and he also has a good connection with Sir Dave Brailsford through Team Sky with the cycling. So he has good connections with a lot of British sporting figures, so to speak. But the credibility of who they appointed, or if they was keeping Ten Hag, came from the top. And the top brass of the company at the moment is Omar Barada, Jean-Claude Blanc, Sir Dave Brailsford, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and Joel Glazer. That's the 5 most important people in Man United at this point in time. And they was all in agreement that the better option out there right now is to keep Ten Hag. So that's the decision that they made.
Cool. So thanks for that, Tom. Because if Southgate came to Manchester United, I said to some people, I was like, if Southgate came to United from what I watched, and Ineos 100% backed it. I was very tempted to go just give the shares back to the Glazers, man. Just give the shares back to the Glazers. Just give them back. That sounds bad, but even the Glazers, when they were in charge, they hired managers that you at least could be like, right, okay, maybe I can believe in these people. Maybe I can believe in them. There's no way on hell that I can fully be behind Gareth Southgate coaching for Manchester United Football Club. There's just not. Any Shabling, we will talk about defending this. We will talk about them. And big up Robin Chatman. Big up everyone. Remember to like the video, and subscribe if you're new. Well, I appreciate it. So, let's get into the transfer news really. And I think there's a lot of news obviously around Zirkzee. I think if that's the sort of the forward. Zirkzee, coming in. And there's been rumours around him. Also, there's the ongoing thing with Everton about Branthwaite, Alvarez. I'm hearing some links from West Ham as well. Obviously, Elise so far is going to Bayern. There's reports of United putting in a last-minute thing in. What was the deal about that? And obviously, Ratcliffe has had some comments about Manchester United, regarding how it's going to take 3 or 4 windows, how we spent so much, and, Real Madrid's net spend has been 300 million, and yet they've got what they've got, and United have spent $1 billion. So what does that mean? So let's just, I guess, get first off with Zirkzee. Tom, what do you know about what's been going on around him around the club?
In terms of Joshua Zirkzee, as far as I'm aware, is a leading candidate in terms of an attacker that Manchester United are targeting. The new sort of INEOS delegation that's in at Manchester United that's running the recruitment team for this summer, they believe he's a top talent. They look at the statistics of the guy, but they also look more towards his player profile. And does it fit the sort of style that they would want going forward, which is to have a disciplined, controlled style of play and be aggressive on the front foot when they have the ball? I would argue that he does. You know, to be fair, from what I've seen about the guy, he's 23 years old. He's 6'4", but he turns as if he's 5'9". The low, like we always define players by, you know, when they have the ball at their feet, if they've got, so to speak in football, low sense of gravity. He dribbles and turns away from players so easily and so elegantly, to put it. And in terms of his actual style, it's almost like a complete striker style. He's not a one-dimensional player where he needs to be in the box and that's all he can do. He can drop deep and link up play. He is almost that sort of replacement for Anthony Martial that you need in this team, but he's the complete opposite player to what Højlund is, which even if you wanted to play them as split strikers, they would bounce off of each other based upon that Zirkzee can make up for a lot of what Højlund maybe lacks, which might be that he can't hold the ball up and bring players into play as much as maybe he can, where he can turn on the ball. Højlund can't turn with the ball when he gets it to feet. Zirkzee can. That's the difference between the two players. But as far as I'm aware with Zirkzee himself, Manchester United have a very good relationship with his agents. His agency they've worked with before, they've got a very good relationship with them. One thing that I know in particular is that Zirkzee's very sought after by Milan, AC Milan. They have made negotiations with Bologna over triggering his release clause. Now, as far as I'm aware, the release clause works at £35 million, but it officially activates after the 1st of July, and it would, if nobody activates the clause, it gets wiped out at the end of August. That's the way that the release clause works. So effectively, it's active for most of the summer. So, in hindsight with it, Manchester United have a lot better of a relationship with his agency than Milan do. The agent that works on Joshua Zirkzee's behalf is prepared to only take compensation payments of between 6 to 8 million euros in comparison to what the standard rate fee due to the release clause is, which is 12 million euros. And that's what AC Milan are having to pay at this moment in time, which they're not prepared to pay, according to form. They're not prepared to bow down to the demands of an agent. So at the end of the day, United have that good working relationship with the agent. The player profile they believe fits the style that they want. And also in terms of when they've done a bit of a background check on the kid, they like the sort of profile that he brings. He's a young, vibrant sort of player coming into maybe an environment where it is filled with maybe a lot more experienced players. But Højlund, as much as they look at it and they think you can put a 30-year-old next to him and he's going to learn, maybe they can learn a lot from each other. Because for what Zirkzee maybe lacks in a clinical instinct in front of goal, you might get that from Højlund. And the exact same thing that I say with the link-up play from Zirkzee to Højlund. So they can almost grow together and they can almost build off of each other's styles. But the one thing that I know is Manchester United have been in contact with the agency. As far as personal terms are concerned, I don't think it'd be a hard deal to do. The agency fees are there and set in stone. They're prepared to give United a cut price deal because they've worked with them before. They like the people that run Manchester United right now, the new people that are in. The relationship that United have with the agency goes well in terms of triggering the release clause, because the release clause was instigated by his agency so that they could remove the player out of the club if big clubs actually came in for their client, which it's clear to see that they are. And effectively, all the thing that Manchester United need to do, it's kind of a similar situation to Elise and Palace, where the only difference is you can contact the agency before you have to make contact with the club. You can agree personal terms with Zirkzee and his agencies behind the scenes, so long as you pay the £34 million asking price in the release clause. And as far as Manchester United are concerned, they value that price tag in the market of today for a striker at the credentials of what you get for potential now is a good deal, considering that 12 months ago that they paid nearly 70 million euros for Rasmus Højlund, who, bearing in mind, guys, it's 3 years younger, massively inexperienced, and came from roughly the exact same league that Bologna playing right now in Italy and Zirkzee plays in. So they see it as an attainable price for a top talent in Europe.
True.
So in terms of going for the player, that's not a problem and that's not an issue. But Manchester United, as far as we are concerned, they're not working on one deal. This is Ineos's difference maker for this window. They're not working on one deal at one time, where it's we'll go for one player and then we'll work for the next and the next. They're working on multiple deals at the same time. That's why you're hearing the negotiation with Branthwaite, Zirkzee. You heard it with OLISE saying until now that Bayern Munich have completely gone all in and got the guy out of there. So they're working on multiple deals at once. It's not just we're working at one pace and that's it.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know, Branthwaite. Rob just has a quick question about. I mean, we kind of sort of addressed this, but I mean, I guess the question is sort of like if Erik ten Hag does bad, you know, will Ineos basically, potentially investigate Southgate or other managers during the season, or do you think Ineos are kind of committed to Ten Hag at least, for at least another season, maybe?
I think with the way that it's working now, anyway, Ten Hag's agency his agent Cosvers is in negotiations with Ineos as we speak over a contract extension. It's not understood how long the extension will be. The only term that we know so far and that journalists know so far about it is there will be a pay increase. That's on his whole contract if he does end up signing a new one. That's the only difference. And I think considering that they'd spoken to other managers behind the guy's back, and then when it kind of went tits up with Thomas Tuchel, they reverted back to Erik ten Hag and almost begged the guy to stay. You're going to have to give him some incentive to stay, other than he loves Manchester United, which he does as a coach. He likes the football club. He likes the environment. He loves the city of Manchester in comparison to where he lives and where he has come from. And that's the sort of environment that you want a coach to work in, where they are settled. For example, you had a couple of years ago with Jose Mourinho. He didn't even buy a property in Manchester. He didn't rent one. He lived out at the Lowry Hotel in Manchester, the team hotel. That's where he resided for 2 or 3 years at Manchester United. That's not a commitment. Ten Hag's moved his whole family up sticks and come to a new country, new environment, but he's happy and he's settled in the environment. But the only difference is now he wants a long-term stamp for it to say that I have so much time under this new structure. It's almost as if they have made a new appointment and Ten Hag's the guy that they believe is that new appointment. They're giving a new lease of life. So by that estimation, if the negotiations go well and he has a good start to the season, I think he needs a good start to the season personally to get a lot of fans back on side that maybe lost at the end of last season. But there's no excuses. He will have players back at that time. He will have new signings into the window that will have at least a say or an opinion on. He's not going to have the full control over, but he's going to have an opinion over the players. And that's the basis of what he wants to work under. He's prepared to work under that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said that he wanted to stay on. So he's clearly happy with what's being done for him and around him. So there's no excuses to not be able to coach the team properly or get results. So in terms of if it goes Pete Tong, of course they will look at other options out there, like every football club will do. But as it stands right now, they are in negotiations over a new contract. And the only way I can only see that doesn't evolve and he ends up signing a new deal is if, again, like Rob was saying, he doesn't have a good start to the season and then they almost pull it from underneath him. Or they could wait the whole season out and then they don't have to pay him anything. They don't sack him, don't pay him. He just walks off. The contract's done. 3 years is up. That's it.
Yeah.
But they've got time on their side anyway, G, because in his current contract right now, they can extend. They've got an extension clause to extend it by 12 months anyway. So they've got time anyway if they don't want to. Yeah, they've got time to play with both Ten Hag and Ineos. So it's not an issue.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. You know, so I think a lot of people missed it in negotiations, and it's one of the things I said where it makes sense that if you can't get any better, you can give Ten Hag another season, and where you can have these negotiations, and these negotiations can continue on into the beginning of the season. Yes, it's not ideal, but at least depending on how things are, because you want some. I guess as a manager, you want some level of security, but the thing is, you can always trigger an extension for a year, see what happens. But yeah, it's not ideal, and I can understand why Ten Hag will be pushing for another, at least maybe a 2-year extension. But it is what it is. But anyway, let's put that to one side. So what about? So obviously, talk about Zirkzee. So what about? Because obviously, there's been this ongoing back and forth between United and Everton regarding Branthwaite, and obviously, I know a lot of people, including myself, aren't really keen on Manchester United. We obviously spent 80 million to get Harry Maguire. We've seen Everton's financial problems, and we don't want to see a situation like where we're paying 80 million to Everton again for another defender, an English defender, no doubt. I mean, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's clear from Manchester United's perspective, they do look at it as almost a bit of PTSD to say, well, we've been here before. The only difference now is Ineos are not going to wait around for the player. That's it. If they don't get a deal done in the spot, when the way that Ineos are kind of trying to structure it, and Omar Barada structured it at City and with the City Football Group was when they negotiated player contracts, extensions, or negotiated for players signing on. If they didn't find an agreement within 10 to 14 days, they walked away from the deal. That's kind of how Barada worked at City. And in comparison to what he's going to take over at Manchester United, Jean-Claude Blanc was a similar sort of CEO when he was at Juventus. I know it was a long time ago, but the sort of negotiations for players, he didn't necessarily stick around for a player if he didn't feel the value was right. The way that Ineos are wanting to work is they want to work fast, efficiently, but effectively. And with the Branthwaite deal, Branthwaite's the main defensive target that they want. And it's the main defensive target that they want because of the Todibo deal, which we'll get onto in a bit, and why that's been a little bit peaked on. But he's the main target that they want based upon the player profile, like I was saying with Zirkzee, fits what they want. He's a lot younger than what the squad has right now, and whose place he'd be taking in the squad in Varane. Lindelof and Maguire potentially going out the door as well. So he has a lot more years left in him. He's not got as many miles on the clock. He's a good development player. Albeit in football, I think you could argue at PSV and also in the Premier League with Everton last season, I think he's had 2 good seasons as a player. But the development phase has to come where you have to suddenly take that step up and that next step up and the level to go somewhere. And the one thing that I know with Barada at Manchester City was that when they was in contacts with Everton, when they tried to sign John Stones, John Stones and Jarrad Branthwaite's almost kind of like the similar sort of deal. Everton tried to fleece Manchester City a couple of years ago when they tried to sign John Stones. I think they wanted about £75 million for him. I think they ended up signing for, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was around about 50 million. So they did end up knocking Everton down on the price, and they got the player for what they wanted. And with the same thing with Branthwaite, he's a player that fits the bill, fits the profile that they want. They like the character of the guy as well. The overall feeling, though, with Ineos is that they're not going to overpay for Jarrad Branthwaite. And the reason why they're not going to overpay for him is because he's not their solid target that they would have preferred to have got. With Todibo, for example, if Todibo and the UEFA clause that's in place right now wasn't there, an agreement would already be there. Todibo was happy months ago to come to Manchester United when Ineos took over. He saw it as a step-up club. He liked the project that was already here. He knew he was their main target. He's known that for months. But because of the UEFA clause, he can't come, which we'll get onto that. But the Branthwaite thing, Branthwaite wants to come to Manchester United. Personal terms for that deal is not going to be an issue to get it done and ironed out. The only problem is the clause that is with Everton right now. Everton, due to PSR, they need money. They've got an owner that doesn't finance them properly, in Farhad Moshiri. They've got a takeover agreement in place with the Roma owner, but that's not going to go through for another couple of months because of the Premier League owners and directors test that's got to be taking place. So they're not going to get a cash injection there. They're building a stadium right now with very little resources and money, and that's a race against time to get it done for the new season. So they're kind of in a pickle, and they're going to have to bow down at some point, and they're going to have to sell a key player. And as I said on the last stream, G, when we did a transfer review show, was they've only got 2 players that I think are valued over 50 million, and that's Branthwaite and Onana. And out of the 2 players, the only offer that they've ever had for a player is Branthwaite, and that's from Manchester United. There's not been any bids for Onana, and no other clubs have made offers for Branthwaite as we speak right now. So it is almost shit or bust. They have to put that. They either have to come down the asking price from what they want, in which, according to form anyway, they want 70 million. Manchester United are not going to go above 55, 60. That's the maximum now. And if they do go above 55, 60, they're not going to pay the asking price, and they will walk away from the deal. So it's almost the case of that. What United would prefer to pay is 50 or 45. Everton wants 70. They kind of just want both of them to pull the weight in and go into the middle. And if they go into the middle, it'll be around 55, 60 million pounds, which people can argue is overpaying for players or whatever.
Yeah.
But considering the market that we're in for centre-backs nowadays, anyway,
It's
difficult to get a quality player for less than 50 million, especially in defence. And Martinez costs
a Premier League
in
team.
the Premier League as well. That the Premier League experience is key in this sort of deal anyway, because it's almost he's already adapted. He's come from an overseas club in Holland, where we know the transition from Holland to the Premier League is difficult to get your head round. He's made that transition quite well. But again, if the Todibo deal wasn't there wasn't a flag over it, this wouldn't be even an issue right now. We wouldn't even be having this conversation, according to form, from what I know within Ineos. So the basis of it is Branthwaite is prepared to come, and he wants to come if they can agree the deal. But if Everton don't lower the asking price, I would say within the next week, Manchester United aren't waiting around. They're pulling the plug on the deal and they're going elsewhere.
Fine. Thanks for that, Tom. I appreciate it. Big up, Colin, in the chat. Welcome to the channel. Good evening, everyone. My first one. Thank you so much, Colin. If you are new, please hit the like and subscribe. Really appreciate it. Obviously, get your questions in as well. Tom is a very good journalist and has been really good and reliable when it comes to breaking United, just general football news as well. So, yeah, if you have any questions for Tom, for us, and or just in general, so get them in the chat. We'd appreciate it. We do mention about need to get Gay. That's, I mean, the way that I wonder how much Gay, because from what I've seen from England, Gay looks as a good centre back. I mean, I'm not saying Braithwaite is bad, but Gay is the one that is playing a starting centre back for England. Is all I'm saying. So maybe, as you said, if Everton don't budge, can United go for someone like Gay?
Gay is a player that they are monitoring and that they are looking at if the Branthwaite deal doesn't go through. The only problem is they're wanting similar money to Branthwaite, but they're prepared to come to like an agreement around 60 million, which is preferably what they want for Branthwaite, in and around that ballpark region. But if Everton aren't going to seek that low, they already know that Palace will. But the difference now is, G, Palace didn't need money before they agreed to let Elise go through his release clause of 45 million. They didn't need to let Elise go. They didn't need to let Gay go. They was already in a strong enough position with PSR anyway. The problem with Palace now is, though, they've already got a cash injection from one key player. They can always just move that Gay price up a little bit. And the better that he plays in the tournament, it's almost going to be kind of like an advertisement to say, well, he's playing that well in the tournament. He's had a brilliant couple of seasons at Palace as well.
His price is going to go up.
His stock is only going to rise. And the longer the window goes on at Manchester United and chasing centre halves, when they're performing if they're in the Euros and the latter stages of the Euros that these players get, the stock's only going to go up, and it's going to be harder to get those players out of there. The only difference is, the Zirkzee deal is partially difficult because he's at the Euros. But as far as I'm aware, he'd be prepared to come to Manchester United. The Gay deal, if there was to go there, would be difficult again because he's at the Euros and trying to negotiate with the player and trying to understand if he actually wants to come to the club is difficult. He's in an England private environment camp, so you can't really access the player personally. You can only do it with his agency. And again, when players like Branthwaite's the easier deal because he's not at the Euros. As far as I'm aware, he's on holiday at this moment in time. So contacting the guy, you can make contact with him personally if you want to. You cannot instigate a meeting or a placement to say, well, this is what Manchester United is going to offer you. You know, new £50 million training facilities being built. You know, 4-year contract, whatever. You know, we'll make increase on your wages and you'll have a first team starting spot, whatever. So that's why the Branthwaite deal makes a lot easier sense right now. But as soon as the Euros ends, the transfer market blows open. That's when every single club in the world, in Europe anyway, is going to go hell-no for players. Because like we saw with the last Euros, the informed player at that last Euros was Locatelli. Every club in Europe wanted Locatelli at that time, and Juventus ended up getting him. That's the thing. And Gay could be the exact same thing, G. He has a standout tournament for England, and suddenly you can maybe wipe that 60 million. You can put wipe the 6 and put an 8 in front of it.
Yeah, that's true.
And you'll have clubs queuing up round the door. And Manchester United might be one of them clubs. But the difference is, if they walk away from a deal and they walk away from a player, they don't go back to it at the end of the summer. That's the thing that Ineos have set out.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you for it, Tom. Appreciate it. Like you're saying, we might touch on Greenwood later. So obviously you mentioned him, but it's a good thing to know about what went on with the Todibo deal, because obviously there was a lot of people, myself included, who assumed that this whole thing with Nice and United and the ownership was actually resolved ahead of time, or that there was at least some awareness from the director that this might be a thing, and there was a push that Todibo was going to come to Manchester United. So could you explain to your audience, people who are listening, like what happened with Todibo, what is going on, and why did it break down?
Well, the UEFA, right, let me make it clear. So Alexander Scheffrin, the UEFA president, met personally with Ineos's delegation, to Dave, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and Jean-Claude Blanc, who's the leading CEO, and he's got a good relationship with Alexander Scheffrin from when he's worked at PSG and Juventus. So he's got good connections within UEFA. Anyway, they've set this meeting up between the three of them, and effectively what Scheffrin pointed out to Ratcliffe was, we're going to give you a 12-month lease fee. Effectively what that means is you have 12 months to sort your shit out. What are you going to do with Nice? You've got an involvement with Manchester United. We're going to give you this season where Nice and Manchester United can play in the Champions League. You've always been in good guidelines and good correspondence with us in terms of our guidelines and rules.
Fine.
So we've got a good relationship with the CEO over here in Jean-Claude Blanc. I consider him as a friend, almost of UEFA and in football. So there's good connections and relationships there. So effectively they bought themselves 12 months to resolve whatever they plan to do. And the ultimate plan will eventually probably be full focus on Manchester United. And with 27%, they've got the control. They basically run the football club on a quarter percentage. Whereas at Nice, they have 100% control over everything that happens with that club. And they also own 100% of it. So the problem that they have right now is the eventual solution for that problem to go away is they will probably sell Nice in 12 months' time. That's the effective probability. Or Nice or Manchester United just don't.
So Tom, just to press you on that, because a lot of people will be saying this. They'll be saying, and they have been saying, is that how is it that Manchester United have to go through this problem, but Manchester City, the likes of Girona et al., that they don't have this problem. How have Manchester City able to circumvent these rules? But Manchester, because Girona is for my Alvarez own, and Girona are going to be playing the Champions League, and no one and players go from to, and no one is none the wiser. So how have City been able to resolve it, but somehow Ineos and United have not been able to resolve it?
Yeah, in terms of the profiling of it though, Manchester City, it's very hard, it's very easy to almost turn a blind eye to City's activities because of the fact of that they loan players or they sell players for shorter fees. So, for example, the Savio deal between Girona and Manchester City are linked in that deal with Troyes. For example, with those three clubs having so close links with the City Football Group, because it's on a low base fee and it's as a loan agreement deal, you can get away with it within UEFA. Because Todibo's such a high-profile player and he breaks the threshold of 20 million euros as a player, if you have a connection within UEFA's guidelines, if you have a dual ownership over two football clubs that want to do a deal together, you can't breach over 20 million euros as the agreement deal. That's it. But every player, when clubs make their listings to UEFA, when they compete in any of their competitions, that's the Conference League to the Champions League, they have to accurately value what each of their players is worth based upon net value, asset value, and what their contract is worth. When you add all those evaluations up, you get to a round ballpark figure, which is effectively then how you would then market a player if you want to sell them. So, for example, with Todibo, based upon that he's one of Nice's best players in that squad, and he's also been a captain of the team for large parts of the season when Dante hasn't played, Nice would value him as one of their top three earners in the club, but also one of their most valuable assets, if not the most valuable. So when they put an evaluation on him towards UEFA, if a club wanted to buy him, that evaluation would be within the region of, say, 40 million euros, which breaks the threshold of the 20 million euro clause. That's the problem there. And people will say, well, why can't, Ratcliffe and Nice just lower his valuation as a player? You can't decrease the valuation of a player if he's your best player in a club. That's the problem.
Okay.
So with the deal, how it goes through, because City have done it under the threshold limit of 20 million euros, you can get away with it because of dual ownership. I know it's unfair, it doesn't seem right, and it doesn't seem like. But if Manchester City bought a player from Girona for more than 20 million euros, they can't do it. And that's the reason why they can, and the reason why they haven't done it, because Girona have some good little players at this moment in time because they got into the Champions League. I'm sure City would love to pick one of them out of here, there, or everywhere, but they can't do it because they can't break the threshold of 20 million euros. And at least, from what I understand anyway, 4 or 5 of Girona's players are valued more over in excess of 20 million euros in their annual accounts. So you can't buy them; they're untouchable to Manchester City. That's the problem. So they can't buy certain players the same way that Manchester United can't buy Todibo from Nice. So that's the problem because of the asset value of the player. But in 12 months' time, if the clause when Nice and Manchester United aren't dual owned and Nice is sold, Manchester United and Nice can do business.
Yeah.
But of course, there's not going to be that relationship there to then do a better deal for your football club. That's the issue and that's the problem. But as far as I'm aware with Todibo, like I was saying before when we were discussing Branthwaite, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now about Branthwaite, about Gay, about anybody. Todibo would be the stalwart player that they would go for. And the funny thing is, if UEFA would pass it through and give the green light for it, and almost break the rules and the guidelines of it to let them sign Todibo, they wouldn't be stupid with it and say, "Oh, well, we're only going to pay 20 million euros for him." No, they would pay the asset value price, which is 35 million, 40 million euros, which is again like we were saying about with Zirkzee, for example, we're a striker in the market. 35 million pounds for a centre back in today's market for what you get with Todibo is a steal. It is a steal in the market right now. So with Todibo and how the deal works, it's a complete red flag and red herring at the moment. Nice and Ineos are contesting it, but the only guidelines that Ratcliffe has been given is that they can't sell Todibo to Manchester United, but they can sell him to any club, any other club in the Premier League, as it stands right now. But they're contesting the ruling against it, which, to be honest with you, it's not going to resolve anytime soon or anytime quickly. But if it does, and they get an agreement with UEFA and they get a green light from UEFA to say, yeah, you can sign the player, we'll almost lift the guidelines for this once, almost, then Todibo's an easy deal to do. He's prepared to come. He's happy to come to Manchester United. But again, when they're targeting players like Branthwaite and potentially Gahey, if they don't get Branthwaite and stuff, I don't think then they'd end up going back in for Todibo afterwards, unless they sell a centre half like a Lindelof or a Maguire or something, and they get it all resolved. But unless there's a resolvement over it, nothing's going to change. He can't come to Manchester United.
Thanks for the update, Tom. I really appreciate that, and I think that both brings clarity to the whole Todibo thing, because like I say, unfortunately, I think a lot of the fan base were very much on Todibo's coming, what's going on. So yeah, I think we've got some questions in the chat. First is from Rob. Question to Tom: can you see us actually bringing in the players we need? Possible left back, centre back, CDM strike, and which players out? Also, do we know maximum budget to spend? Thanks.
Yeah, in terms of Ineos's targets throughout, they want to sign a young left back. That's one thing that I do know. They definitely want to sign at least one centre half this summer, which is the first position that they're prioritising and targeting, mainly for the summer. But they are working on multiple deals. But that's the position that they like and want most. Another thing, in regards to, say, Erik ten Hag, when he agreed to stay on at Manchester United, one of his principles to stay on at United was he wanted a lot of his main signings being brought in before pre-season. It's what he wanted in the beginning when he first came to Manchester United, but the old regime couldn't deliver him that because they were incompetent and they couldn't negotiate. Ineos are different in that case, where they want to do that. They see that as the right solution, the right plan going forward. So, in an ideal world, the Ineos want a left back, a centre back, a midfielder, and a striker, like Rob is saying. Those are the clear outline points. But again, it's almost playing one in, one out. So if they sign, for example, they sign Branthwaite and they get him in. If Harry Maguire or Lindelof leaves, that spot then needs filling. In the exact same case, if they bring a left back in, they then need to make room for this new player coming in. So Malacia or Shaw, someone's gonna have to budge. CDM exactly the same. CDM spot is filled by Casemiro at this point in time. If you want to do CDM, you're going to have to remove Casemiro. That's the problem. The only position that is viably free to bring into this team out of all those positions there is a centre half and a striker. They're the only two free positions that are available right now without having to move players around to fit them in. So that's the two positions, ironically, that they're actually targeting right now in Zirkzee for striker and Branthwaite for centre back. So again, the comparables are there. And to answer Rob's second question about max summer's budget spend, the way that Ineos want to work, they want to work within the region of 100 million net spent. That's where they spend 100 million, but also the player sales that they make from the summer recoup into the budget. But the way that they want to work it is that they at least they bring in enough players to cover the whole season, but they also bring in the right profile of players for the environment and the new way of playing that they want. So it's almost a balancing act. They want the best of both worlds, the best financially, but the best commitment for the future going forward. And in terms of what Rob, the first part of your question was, in terms of can we actually see us bringing in these players? I think you can. I think the way that they've moved right now, where they're prioritising two key positions where there's holes in striker and centre back, if they get those two deals in before the summer, I think Ten Hag would be happy. I don't think he's under any illusions that they're going to do all four or five signings before pre-season. It's ridiculous for a club to think like that. But at the end of the day, if they get two key positions that he wants, which he wanted a centre back and he wanted another striker, he wanted another striker for 6 months. He didn't get it. He wanted another centre half last summer when he was supposedly to sell Maguire, and he didn't get it. So again, there is these probabilities there that these positions are going to be filled before the summer, before the pre-season tour. So then, effectively, then when some players are going to move and they're going to leave and they're going to make sales and stuff, money's almost going to balance back over to where Manchester United can spend again. And when they can spend again, they'll target more players again. And that's effectively how they're going to do it.
Fine. Thanks for that, Tom. And hopefully that's answered your question, Rob. And I think David T has one. Sorry, Stephanie has a big up audience of the big up. Thank you, Stephanie. Long time no see. Hope you're doing well, Stephanie. Big up. And yes, please, for those who are watching, if you can like the video, it helps with the algorithm. 34 people watching. Appreciate it. If you can hit the like button, smash notification when you know we're live. And also, subscribe. It helps with the algorithm. We'll obviously be trying to get more transfer shows as the transfer window continues to progress. And then David says, what if we sell Todibo to another foreign club Ineos own and loan him to United?
this theory has been used so many times. Well, you could sell him to Lausanne in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Loan him to Manchester United and obligate that you can buy him.
Yeah.
To be fair, I'd have to go and check the guidelines and the rules with UEFA, but
it's a workaround.
I think technically it could work, and it is a loophole.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is Lausanne, as a club, like I'm saying about the asset value with Todibo and how football clubs work off of asset value within UEFA's guidelines. Does Lausanne make enough money to the point of 40 million euros, so 35 million pounds? Do they make 35 million pounds as a club within their budget as a club to sign him, to then be able to loan him out and not go bust? That's the issue. So do the finances add up with Lausanne to then do it? And because Lausanne aren't a UEFA club, they're not in one of UEFA's competitions. There's obviously a situation and a problem there as well to say, well, if they're not in UEFA's competitions, they don't get any European money coming in. The TV rights in Switzerland aren't great. So again, in terms of money coming in as a club, sustainably to grow, it's not great. So will they be able to meet the asset value? If I had to take a good guess, I'd probably say no. But it is a loophole and maybe a potentially way to get around it. But whether it can work or not, I don't know. And to be honest with you, I don't think that Manchester United would want to work like that anyway. Because like I said, they have a good relationship with UEFA. If you do that, that's just going to piss them off. And suddenly that relationship can go in the blink of an eye. And you don't, in a way, I understand, how people want to move and stuff, but you see it with Manchester City and the allegations that are against them. Suddenly you can have something like that lambasted against Manchester United and say, well, they cheated to sign a player. That's the issue.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So I hope that answers your question, David T. Let's have a look. Any more comments here? Big up Lucky Sing the chat. RDS Solo says, I was late. Could I please get a quick recap? So Zirkzee is someone that United are generally looking at as an option. Branthwaite is essentially we're not going to be taken for mugs, and we are going to be prepared to leave if Everton don't ask a lasting price. And someone like Gehi is seen as a legitimate option. And then as far as Todibo is concerned, we can't get him because of UEFA's rules. That's the gist of it. I think that's the gist of it. I think that's the gist of it. Big up Jarvis, man. Big up, and make sure you go and subscribe to the MUFC Realist. I think yes. But big up Jarvis, man. Stephen says, how many centre backs do we realistically need to fight on four fronts? Leach, Evans, Cambrala staying. So who goes out of Maguire or Lindelof? Query bearing in mind last year's injury fiasco. I mean, that is a good point. I mean, Evans, to be honest, should be seen as fifth choice as a centre back.
Yeah.
Very much a fifth choice as a centre back here. So Varane, I personally think we should let him leave, but it is what it is. But for me, you need to sign two centre backs. I don't know. I think United are looking at offers for Lindelof from what I'm seeing. I don't get the impression that, unlike last summer, Maguire, they seem to be in a push to sell Maguire. Maybe, but based on his performances this season and him being makeshift is my understanding. But also, I'll get back to you, but it sounds to me, for me, you probably, if you're going to let Varane go, if you're going to sell Lindelof, you need to bring in two centre backs, because I don't think it would be. We're going to be in a situation where if Leacher gets injured again, we can't even really rely on the injury capabilities of even Maguire and Lindelof, because they were out for some time. We don't have Varane anymore. Kumbwala, and he was young, and even he got injured for a bit. So we could be in a situation where we're going to do Evans and Casemiro again if Casemiro doesn't go.
Yeah.
That could be a situation. So I don't know. I mean, Tom, do you have any thoughts about that? Or
the thing with Maguire and Lindelof is you can market Maguire a lot better than you can Lindelof based upon English tax. He's one of England's main players within that squad. If not Gareth Southgate's go-to defender, he's probably the first defender that he calls up on the sheet beside Kyle Walker and John Stones. Them three have always been locked in with Southgate. There's never been an issue about them three. You can maybe even make a case for Shaw as well. So as a back four, that's the set four that he prefers and he likes. So marketing Maguire is not an issue. Again, the Premier League clubs were interested in Maguire last summer. There was those clubs interested in him. West Ham were prepared to pay the money that it took to get him. Lindelof, the only difference is with now is that Maguire's the easier player to market. And to be honest with you, I think you'll get more money for Maguire than you will Lindelof.
True.
That's just my opinion. If you market him properly as an England international, but Lindelof's the player at the moment that's getting a lot more interest in him than Maguire. That's the problem that United have right now. And Lindelof, I think, is a lot harder to market based upon that he's not played as many games as he has done in previous seasons. So clubs don't really know what he's got left. He's not necessarily at an age where you can develop him. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's actually 20. He's 28, 29, around about that age. So
I think so. Yeah. He's not young.
Now is where the time you need to start seeing him actually perform to a high level. And to be honest with you, if Lindelof's going to go anywhere, I'd take a good guess that he's going to go somewhere in Europe. I don't think he'll stay in the Premier League. I just think the league, the pace of the league, the speed of it doesn't suit him. And the sort of shooters that I know with Lindelof anyway, he's got I think he's got two clubs in Spain that
I'll be right back on.
Yeah, no worries, yeah. He's got two clubs in Spain that are interested in him, which is Valencia are interested in Lindelof, but also Villarreal are interested in him from Spain. But then also there's a couple of Italian clubs that are interested in him as well. Inter Milan like him as a player, but in terms of Inzaghi's setup and the way that he plays, he's not necessarily a player that suits their style. But within the hierarchy at Inter, he's very liked and he's very sought after. And the exact same case is that Aaron Wan-Bissaka is at Inter as well. So there's deals to be done there with players. The problem that you have with between Maguire and Lindelof is Maguire is the player that you'll get more money for, and he's so much of an easier sell to clubs. But Lindelof's the only player at the moment between the two of them that's getting any interest. And the more and longer that Maguire is injured at his current time, and until he recovers from that, clubs aren't going to touch him and aren't going to negotiate for him yet. But I think as soon as United get a centre-back in, Branthwaite, whoever they end up getting in, as soon as they get one in, they will look to market both Lindelof or Maguire out the door. 12 months ago, if we were having this conversation, he would have already been sold to West Ham, because I think Ineos would have done the deal. They'd have ticked all the keys to it, chucked the can down the road, sent him down to West Ham, and then they used the money that they got from Maguire from the deal, and then they bought another centre half. and that's the same way that it works. But again, with how West Ham has suddenly changed coaches and managers, Maguire's not a player that they're fought after to be looking at this summer.
Of course,
So with David Moyes leaving, he was a player that really liked Maguire. He was intent on getting him last summer, and he didn't get him. He's no longer the coach anymore. Julian Lopetegui, as far as I'm aware, Maguire's not a player that he likes the look of or the profile of. So it's not an easy sell to West Ham again, unless they're going to go against the principles of a new coach, which I don't think they're going to do, to be fair. So Maguire again, you can market him. I'm sure there's a decent club in the Premier League that would do a deal for him. To be fair, G, I think if Everton weren't in the shit-staining position that they're in right now with PSR, I think I could see him. I could see him at Everton. I could next to Tarkowski, two similar sort of defender profiles. I could see him there. I really could, but I don't see where he's going to fit in a lot of Premier League clubs at the moment in time. That's the issue.
So I'm just reading some Luke Shaw getting injured news. I mean, I think Giles mentioned, don't forget Shaw. I'm not gonna Shaw. The name Shaw is going to be banned from this channel for a while. If I speak, because certain players weren't even picked to go to Germany, and yet somehow we picked the player who wasn't even fit to take up a spot. I appreciate he's our only left back. But there are left backs there. I mean, so I'm sure Chilwell was fit. So I'm just saying sometimes it's not about names; it's about how the team actually works. And yes, maybe certain players aren't the best, but still, it's still better to play with an actual left back than someone who can't play. But anyway, that's a rant to one side. Let me have a look. Colin says, if not Zirkzee, who else is available as striker? Really well, there is not much out there. I mean, that's a fair point. I don't know how many striker options actually there are. But United going for Tom. If we do not get Zirkzee, is there anyone else that United can go for or looking at?
There is other players that they can go for, but Zirkzee just fits the profile of what they want right now in terms of the age, the style of the player, but also. He's a future player. Again, with Højlund, he's the future of the football club. Zirkzee, you could say, could come in and be the future of the club again. Whereas other players that they sought after on the list, for example, likes of Jonathan David, who Chelsea are currently negotiating to try and get him out of Leo as we speak. Jonathan David's a similar profile to like Zirkzee, where he's in a league that's not necessarily. He's not at a club in the league where he's going to win major trophies or win major honours. He clearly wants to have a step up to a bigger football club when he gets the opportunity to. And like I said, players like Jonathan David, I've been on Manchester United's lists before Ineos came in, and are still on the lists now, on the scouting reports. And exactly the same point can be made for Ivan Toney. In terms of Premier League proven, if they were going to sign a striker in this league right now, Ivan Toney is the player that they would target. But again, when we talk about price and we talk about consistency in the market, Ivan Toney, you're not touching for £80 million. And that's benchmarks for what Brentford are saying. And to be honest with you, the way that Toney's conducted himself in terms of personally and character-wise, Ineos don't, as far as I'm aware, in terms of inside of Ineos, what I said before in the last stream about Steve Brailsford, he does almost characterising of players and saying, are you going to fit this club? Does your personality, almost like does your face fit? He doesn't like the personality of Ivan Toney, based upon obviously the betting allegations are one thing. We can put them to one side. But he's been on 3 or 4 different shows and podcasts, flirting around with big football clubs. And he's not exactly just put it out there to say, well, you know what, I'm a consummate professional of football. If a move comes along, I'm happy to go. No, he's been completely flirting around with names like Liverpool, Arsenal. He's put clubs out. He's almost named clubs that he'd like to go to. And it's not being childish to say that he's not Manchester United, so we're not going to sign him. That's not the point. The point is he's out there almost campaigning and marketing for him to move. That's not a player that they want. They don't want a player that just wants out just to go to a next level. They want a player who A, deserves to go to a next level, B, is affordable for the price that you're going to get, and C, is going to fit what you want as an environment. And maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago, Ivan Toney's a player that they would have signed because he's a bit of an ego player. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got a point to prove. And to be honest with you, as a player, I like him. But as a character, I've got my question marks about him based upon what I've seen off the field. And at the end of the day, I've seen what I saw with the Tonali deal at Newcastle and how that fucked up with the betting allegations there.
True.
I've seen what I've seen with Ivan Toney. Listen, you can make a case that people can deserve second chances. Absolutely, of course they can. But when you've done that at such a low league level club, you can't come to Manchester United and even have that doubt. Not even that you'll do it. You can't even have that doubt. So if you've got doubts about the guy, don't sign the player. And that's why what I say with Dave Brailsford, he's got his question marks about if he'd fit in. Whereas with a player like Joshua Zirkzee, he's rubber ticked it. Fits the profile, fits the bill perfectly. Yeah, if he comes in, suits us.
That's fair, Tom. That's fair. I mean, considering obviously what happened with Greenwood and then Sancho,
This is what I mean.
Anthony, Ronaldo, even to a certain extent, though at least with Ronaldo, he's there's still a love from the fan base and things. So Ronaldo's a bit of a separate case, but the certainly other three, it's United don't need that level of attention anymore, really. So I completely understand your point there. So there's a question which says, before we get back in screens, talk about Alvarez, Elise, and a bit more, especially regarding the Sim Ratcliffe, because I want to talk about towards the end. I want to talk about Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments and in the interview that he had regarding like Madrid and spending and all the rest of it, and the fact that it's going to take 3 or 4 transfer windows. I don't know what that means in terms of 3 or 4, whether that means that's including January transfer windows, whether that's including 3 or 4 summers. Because if you're telling me that we're not expecting any change for United for 3 or 4 years and we're going to have to wait for summers, that's concerning. We'll get to that a bit later. So Solo Quest says, Tom, is the interest of Casemiro real from Saudi? If he goes, which player might... I think, actually, sorry, I've just read it. We'll come to that with the whole, at the end of the player talk, we're talking about player outings, because obviously I want to bring up Casemiro, Greenwood, and Sancho for that as well. So we'll come back to that. So actually, let's go... let's quickly just talk about Alvarez and then Elise. So, again, I've only heard just seeing reports on this. I've not really, if I'm honest, seen Ornstein and Fabrizio really hone in on Alvarez, but is from West Ham. But is there any truth to United looking at Alvarez by any chance, Tom?
Yeah, there is. And the one thing that I'll say with Alvarez is that 12 months ago, when Manchester United were looking at bringing in a CDM or another midfielder, before they signed Mason Mount, they looked at Alvarez before he went to West Ham. They also looked at players like Mohamed Kudus before he went to West Ham. They also, again, looked at players like Amrabat, which they ended up getting at the end of the window anyway. So they almost got the last one of the 3 that they actually originally wanted.
Tom, can you explain who decided to sign Mount over Mohamed Kudus, man? Can you explain who made that decision, Tom?
Erik Ten Hag wanted Mason Mount wholeheartedly. I'm not going to deny him saying that. He was a player that he was completely convinced on. He liked the player. And the one thing that I know with Ten Hag anyway, and Mason Mount personally, from what I know anyway, is that he's very disappointed with the way that his season has started and his career has started at Manchester United. He's on a new fitness program, as far as I'm aware. He's gone to a rehabilitation centre in Portugal. I don't know if it's similar to the one that Marcus Rashford, Bruno Fernandes and Declan Rice went to last summer. I could be wrong. It might not be. I think it is anyway. I think he's in Algarve in Portugal. He's gone to. But he's doing something that maybe some players in this club haven't done, which is take the time out of the personal life. Instead of going on holiday and going to Ibiza or Ayia Napa or wherever and go on the pit, have a few bevies and do whatever, on a private yacht or whatnot. Instead of doing that and having a bit of a vacation, he's had his holiday. He's had a bit of time away from the game. He's on a rehabilitation program to try and get his fitness back up. to the start of the new season. That's something that I want to see from players. If you've got an issue or you've got a niggle or a problem, do something about it. Go out of your way and do something about it. Don't expect this club to do everything for you. I want people who are going to be fully committed to this club. You can have an holiday at the end of the season. That's fine. I'm not asked about that. But the timings of it, G, if you've got an issue or you've got a problem, do something about it. It's your career at the end of the day. And I don't think players take responsibility. Enough of it. But yeah, like we were just saying with Mason Mount, Erik ten Hag was fully convinced on the player. He still is, to be fair to him. And you know something? When Mason Mount gets up to full fitness, G, for the start of next season, you can almost look at him as he is a new player because we didn't really see much of him last season. So it's going to be another player that's available for large parts of this season. Should he sort the fitness issues out, which apparently from what if he goes to the same rehabilitation centre that Marcus Rashford went to, for example, this last summer and Bruno Fernandes went to, then I think it's good because the results that those players have had in terms of fitness has been a lot better than what it has been in recent years. Rashford hasn't missed as many games as he has done in recent years. Fernandes, as we've seen, G, hardly misses any games anyway, irrespective of that. And I think he's been going to there for a couple of seasons, to be fair to him. And Declan Rice, who was another player that went through that process, again, at Arsenal, hasn't had that many injuries. And he's at the Euros right now, currently. So I think that proves a point about the credibility of these rehabilitation programs and fitness camps almost, that you go on to get back up to full fitness and sort your issues out. We'll play that Alvarez, again, is a player that Ineos like. If I know we'll get onto it about player sales and stuff with Casemiro and stuff. If Casemiro was to go, Edison Alvarez is a player that they would look at. And he's not the only player that they would look at. There's many a player that they will look at in midfield. But he's one of the players that was a standing candidate before for last summer, and he is still this summer, irrespective of it. Because the one thing that Ineos have looked at is he doesn't get as much game time as maybe he would have thought when he went to West Ham. For example, they have Southgate. What's the guy's name again? I forgot his name. They had Paquetá, and there's another guy. There's another guy in midfield. I can't remember what his name is. Pablo Fornals, sorry, that's the guy.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Those three in midfield have almost been West Ham's sort of stonewall midfielders ever since Declan Rice left. And I know they brought in players like Calvin Phillips and they brought in Edison Alvarez as well. But Alvarez hasn't maybe been given as much game time as other players have been for that whole season. I don't know if it's that David Moyes didn't maybe prefer him or didn't like him as a player. I think he's a top player, to be fair to him, G. I do. I thought when he was at Holland, I thought he was a very good player. He can play defensive midfield. He can play centre half. I've also seen the guy invert and play at right back as well. So he can transition into different positions if you need him to. He is very versatile in that regard. But again, for the age that he's at, I think he is around 23, 24 years old. So in terms of a profile, again, G, he meets the profile of the age, the characteristics of it. I think Ten Hag's opinion they would take massively on this player based upon that he's worked with him before. So Ten Hag can almost provide an insight into what the guy is like without having to speak to him personally to gauge it or understand it. And again, I think I'd have to do my research. I think the same agency that Edison Alvarez is under is the same agency that Erik ten Hag has at this moment in time. So Erik ten Hag's agency have a very good relationship with Manchester United. They have a lot of clients and a lot of players at Manchester United. Alassia's one of them, Ten Hag's one of them, Weghorst was one of them when he was here. There's many players that they've worked with that they've brought to Manchester United that have connections with the Dutch league or Dutch players. So there is that connection there potentially if you want to bring him in as well. So again, he fits the bill for a lot of what they would want. And again, G, this is what I'm saying. The four players arguably that are on your screen there that we've listened to speak about tonight all fit the profile of what Ineos want. Young, hungry, vibrant, up-and-coming players. That's exactly what you want. If you can't buy top quality experience, do what Real Madrid did. Buy all the best young players that's out there in the
True,
world or development players.
true.
And try and do something with them.
I think that's something that people haven't really given Real Madrid much credit for behind the whole Madrid thing. At the end of the day, yes, of course, they had the experience with, it's a mixture. You've had Kroos, you've had Modric, you've had, Carvajal, to a certain extent, Courtois. So you've got experience in the midfield, but they did buy Vinicius Junior young, they did buy Rodrigo young, they did buy Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Valverde, etc. They did buy these players young, So I think that the era of spending £100 million on, which is what United were doing on giving expensive wages to players above the age of 30, in my opinion, should be over. If you're going to give a contract to players over 30, at most, you give them a 2-year deal with capped wages. You don't give them 3 or 4-year deals. And Real Madrid didn't do that. Or you give them 1-year deals that are based on performance. That's to me how you do it. Not signing. Just players that you don't know what's going to happen with them. So yeah, let's quickly move on to just quickly see any comments to read out. Obviously, some engagement talking time, but it's cool. Pick up everyone in the chat. Remember, you like to like and subscribe, share. If you're new, so got about 30 people watching. So please like the video. I think Stephanie has. I think we're sitting on 29 likes or 30 likes, something. So yeah, get those likes up. Really appreciate it, and thanks everyone. I hope you're enjoying the show. So can you talk a bit about, obviously, just before we get into the outgoings, about what happened with OLISE? Because obviously, my overall impression was that although United were linked with it, really and truly, Chelsea were probably more pushing for it more so than United were. So what happened with OLISE with United? And obviously now it looks like he's going to Bayern Munich. But what was the deal? What was the deal with that?
Right, Chelsea tried to sign OLISE 12 months ago, last summer. I spoke about this before when we almost detailed the player. And the thing with OLISE is, me as a fan, I like OLISE. From what I've heard about him behind the scenes and everything, and with close connections with his family and stuff too, he's a grounded kid. He's not motivated by money. He lets his family and his agent take care of all of his business. He just enjoys playing football. He believes that he'll be a top player. He's got a top potential. He thinks he's going to the top as a player. He's not arrogant. He does believe that he needs to step up to go and almost reach the stars and be in a bigger and better football club and environment to thrive at the top level. And the Palace is never going to win a Champions League. He's probably never going to win a Premier League. So if he's going to win big trophies and big manager honours, he's got to go somewhere. Chelsea tried to sign him 12 months ago. He has a personal connection with Chelsea's academy before, with players like Trevor Chalobah and Madueke. He's been in competition with those players before at under 21 level with France and with the England under 21s. There's been that sort of in those circles with those players before, so he's had good connections with those players. So again, in terms of Chelsea, they tried to sign him 12 months ago. They've left the negotiations 12 months ago, to be fair, G, quite pissed off because they didn't get, not because they didn't get the player, but because of the way that Palace conducted it. They didn't let them properly negotiate with him before speaking to them. They wanted to almost insert all these different clauses where you can only speak to us if you're prepared to pay X amount of price in the end to buy him. And that's not even with agreeing to even speak to the player if you like him or not. That's just, we're setting a price already. If you don't like him, don't speak to him. It's as simple as that. So the way that it worked with OLISE was, again, this time, Chelsea, they went through the proper channels. They spoke to Chelsea. They spoke to Crystal Palace directly. Steve Parish and Bedard Iqbal had a private conversation, as far as I'm aware, regarding the finances of how the deal would be structured. They ended up leaving the negotiations yesterday, and pulled completely out of the deal. They didn't want anything to do with it. They felt that the calculations of what it would take to get Elise out of there was unrealistic. Now, what I mean by the calculations of it is, you pay £45 million as the release clause fee. That's to get him out of there. You then pay £5 million in add-ons, which then adds up to £50 million, and then you also pay his agency contract fees to then buy him out of his whole contract, which is another £5 million. So effectively, it's a £55 million deal, all in. But the problem is, with that all in, that's not all in, including then what Elise is going to be paid over a contract, which will probably then be in the region of around £8+ million per season. So suddenly, a £45 million deal, G, can turn into a £65 million deal.
Yeah, of
and
course.
That's where Chelsea lost interest, because the value of that player, because of all the complications that it took to get him, they didn't like it. They didn't see it. They felt hard done by last summer. They've gone through the proper channels this summer, and they feel like they've been mugged off once again. So they walked away before it got anywhere near trying to get the player. But again, say with Manchester United's position, United liked the player, but they didn't prioritise that position as a right winger. The priorities were a centre half and a striker, which is what they're targeting right now, in Zirkzee and in Branthwaite. So the problem there is, Elise was always going to be a hot property. He was always going to be a hot player. He's not with the French squad right now, so like with the Branthwaite deal, like I was saying before, it's an easy deal to negotiate for. Bayern Munich, to be fair to them, Jay, they've done the deal how Palace wanted. You could argue they've bent over to Palace in a way to say, well, yeah, we'll pay the £45 million, we'll pay you £5 million add-ons, we'll pay the termination of his contract and his agency fees, and Elise we'll pay you whatever you want. Just come to Bayern Munich. They've done the whole deal, all in, everything's sorted, everything's signed, and he'll be a Bayern Munich player, providing that he passes the medical tests, which, to be honest with you, I don't think will be that much of an issue. But with Manchester United's position on it, Elise was a player that they was going to come to later on in the window, should they make player sales. So the problem was, if they got money for, say, Sancho, G, like I was saying before, about one in, one out in a position, if they got money for Sancho, and let's say they got money for Greenwood, suddenly, there's your Elise money. And then they could have gone and negotiated against Munich, against Chelsea, and said, well, we can pay a £60 million premium package, all in, and we get everything all in for £60 million. The players all in and on board and signed, clubs are fine with a fee and agreement, and his agents are all paid off. That's the way that it would have worked. But that was to come later in the window. But with a player like Elise and how talented he is, G, as a player, and how sought after he is in Europe, he was going to be an early steal for one of Europe's top clubs. And Bayern Munich clearly see him and value him a lot more than the other clubs did. So that's why they wanted to get in there early, and they've done the deal early. Manchester United's priority wasn't that position. Whereas at Bayern Munich, that is a priority position for them, is strengthen the width areas, which is what they're doing. So you can't argue for Manchester United's that case in that point. The only thing that I will say, though, is I think Ineos will be disappointed that they didn't end up getting him, because they did actually really like him, to be fair, G. He was a massive, massive tick on all of the boxes. What I was saying before about character, personality, did he fit the style? 100% he fit the style that they wanted to build on. The only issue that you could say maybe put against him was his injury record. But again, like I said with Mason Mount, with players like Declan Rice and stuff, there's the right rehabilitation and fitness camps out there where you can go and get help, you can find solutions, and the problem disappears. And if you can do that and you can make that commitment, from what I know, G, about him personally, I think he would sort of make, if the club pushed for him and said, we'll sign you on the basis of that you sort out your fitness issues privately, and we'll do our best to help you the best way that we can as a club, I think it would have been mutually beneficial for both people. But again, who's to say that he can go to Bayern Munich and he might not come back, and he might come back to the Premier League later on? You don't know. You don't know. But I think he, to be fair, just on Elise personally, I think he's a top player. I really do. I've always rated him ever since that I first saw him come out of that Crystal Palace team. I think Jimenez, they are top players. I really do think they're top players. Gay's another one, Morton's another one. But in terms of the attacking players in the Premier League, I think Jimenez are probably two of the best ones that you can get on the market right now. But you don't touch either of them for a whole, as I say, all-in package deal for less than £60 million. And Gay, as we were saying before, G, is the exact same problem. It's a £60 million deal. Hit or miss.
Let's quickly go into because I see some comments and I'm obviously flagging up, so because I'm not acknowledging them. So big up the problem. I think we're about 1 hour 20 in, so maybe we'll be like, well, obviously we're coming towards the end of the show, so but keep your questions in, and obviously I'm keeping track of those comments. And make sure that you like the video, subscribe. Over 40 plus people watching. Please like the vid and subscribe to the channel if you're new. The aim is to hopefully get to 5K by the end of the year. It's a big aim, but let's see what happens. You know what I mean? You know, so that'll be nice. And if you haven't followed me already, follow me at We United X on Twitter. Also follow Tom on Twitter as well. You can see his hashtag at the bottom here at TomJonas1. And consider following us on Twitch as well. So we've talked obviously a lot more about comings in, but outgoings are obviously a thing as well, and I think obviously important when it comes to how much money United have to spend. So, what is the latest on outgoings United, specifically regarding Casemiro, solo mention, but also likes of Greenwood and Sancho, and maybe others? What are you hearing about that, Tom?
Yeah, well, we discussed it anyway with Lindelof. You've got many clubs from Spain and Italy that are interested in him. Maguire, as I said before, hasn't really got that much interest hyped up around him at this moment in time. But I do expect if United markets him properly to clubs, he will gain attention of some clubs, predominantly in the Premier League. Sancho again, Dortmund can't pay the fees. They haven't got 40 million euros. So £40 million to buy him out straight away, which is what United want.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a problem there, but they've almost given United a lifeline to say, well, if you don't get a deal over the line, we will take him on loan again under the exact same terms that we did for 6 months, but we'll just take him on loan for the full year. Greenwood is exactly the same thing with Getafe. As I said, I've said this a couple of times now anyway. United's hierarchy, they've got a good relationship with the people who run Getafe and the president. They've got almost a good relationship. So it's almost like if United want to loan players there that Getafe like or whatever, they can do a deal and loan players there. If Getafe have a top player that emerges through their ranks that they have or whatever, Manchester United, I'm sure if they wanted that player and they like that player, they can do a good deal there between the two of them. So Getafe can't afford what it's supposed anyway with Mason Greenwood is £35 million. They can't afford it. So what they've given is United almost a back burner clause to say, well, try and get the money that you want for him, then guys. But if you don't get the money that's for him, our offer still stands and we'll take him on loan for, again, the full season under the exact same terms that we had before. Is that fine or not? And Manchester United have almost said, well, that's fine, but we want to try and sell them predominantly. That's our aim. So if we can get the money that we want for them, we're going to sell them. If we don't, if that offer still stands, we'll probably use it and get them off the books again for another year. And so you're not solely paying their wages for that whole year. But with players like Greenwood and stuff, Juventus, I think, are massively, from what I understand, are massively interested in him. They do really like him as a player. There's been this, theory that, could United maybe pick some players from Juventus and almost do a swap deal and stuff. I don't really think that, to be fair to Manchester United, I don't really think any of the players that are in the Juventus squad right now fit the bill of what they want for characteristics, players, or the style that they want to go forward with. I don't really think there's an ideal player that, fits the bill. People will say you could use him to get Vlahovic because he's a more experienced striker.
True.
But, Zirkzee and Vlahovic in terms of profile are very different. Chiesa, you could say, is a like-for-like wide player. He's a good player, but the injury record against him is terrible. People want Italian journalist described Chiesa to me as an MAI, which is a missing in action player. That's the one. That's the one thing that they described Chiesa to me before.
Yeah,
He's a missing in action player. He doesn't play that very often, but when he does play, he plays very good. That's the problem that you have with him. But again, rehabilitation camps, fitness camps, it can be done. But I don't think there's a player that they really want to try and get out of Juventus massively, to be fair to him. So again, like I said, Greenwood's got massive interest in him. Greenwood, to be fair to him, he does have options. He can go back to Getafe for another year on loan, but predominantly United want money for him. I think he would go to Juventus if the offer came up. It's another top European club. Italy, a different culture, different environment. Again, it's away from England, G. So we understand, obviously, if he comes back to England, you already can understand and establish what he will have. There will be that racial element that will be used against him. There probably will be the allegations that will be used against him. We know about the chanting and all of the social media trolls that will come out for him and everything. And listen, right or wrong, you can say it for what it is, but I know my morals, and I don't believe anybody should be racially motivated online or anything or used against. And I certainly don't believe that anybody, regardless of personal allegations or issues, I don't think they should be lambasted and almost publicly hung, drawn, and quartered just because he didn't get found guilty in a court of law, but in the eyes of people, he did get found guilty because of what we all know, what we saw, and we all know what we heard. You can make your own personal judgment on it, but don't make it personal about the guy. So at the end of the day, I think, to be fair to him, G, I think he understands that he can't come back to this league. That's what I think anyway. I think he understands that he's a kid who lives in, he's a kid almost like a lot of people at a young age. He knows how the world works. And I think he knows what's waiting for him if he does come back to this league. And sure as hell, if Juventus play in Europe and they get an English tie draw, I think he knows what he's going to get when he steps off the plane in England. So, like I said before about the relationships before between him and the old regime at United, it went completely bust up. It went completely shit up. They blew the gaff and relationships between him and Richard Arnold and John Murtough. It was how can I put it? It was very shit. It was very dull. He didn't believe that he had a proper relationship and a connection with the two of them. They didn't necessarily give him any support or any guidance, to be fair to them, and went out of the way to do anything for him. But
well, I mean, to be fair, when you're basically being told by them, oh yeah, we're going to integrate you, we're going to bring you back, and this is what's going to happen, and blah 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 blah, and then you're then because of the backlash, you're then told, oh sorry, everything that we said to you is not going to happen. And then you then go on loan, and then no one hears from you again. I can understand that. So it's poor planning and poor leadership fundamentally. Either the way I see it is you either clear from the beginning that you're like, this is unacceptable. Sorry, public, it is what it is, and make your decision and leave it at that. Then not spend months with internal views and different things like that, which I suspect are appropriate, but. I think fundamentally the situation got drawn out much longer than it is. And, you look at what happened with City with Mendy. I know that went to court and stuff like that. So, but still, they kind of made a decision earlier on. And that was that, So, and then, afterwards, with how I found guilty, now he can sue and different things. Yeah, that's fine. Mendy's within his right to do so. But the point is, so a decision was made and it was put aside, and that was that, So, you ready to talk about some? So I think I said like Casemiro, others. Is there any other news about that?
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't cover Casemiro. In terms of Casemiro, the Saudi interest has always been there.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, the main Saudi club that the Public Investment Fund would ideally want him to go to is Al Nassr, which is Cristiano Ronaldo's
club, isn't it? Yeah.
So the relationship to get to almost convince Casemiro to go to Saudi Arabia, if he didn't get convinced already, was to almost partner back up with Ronaldo. There is a situation as well. Rafael Varane is a free agent. We know Saudi Arabia can pay top money for top players. Is there a situation where all three of them, when they was reunited at United are reunited at Al Nassr. There is that possibility that it can happen. And with how Saudi Arabia run football at the moment in time and run transfers, it can happen.
I might watch the Saudi Pro League for that alone, So I don't know. I might certainly more so than less. But anyway, yeah, go on.
Yeah, he's got like I said, he's got a good possibility that he can go to Al Nassr. Al Nassr haven't made contact with Manchester United personally, but again, the one thing that I said before about personal relationships that they've almost built, they've built a good relationship with the people, with the representatives that run Al Nassr, not PSI, the PFI in the Public Investment Fund, because they want to speak to people who run the Public Investment Fund. You contact Newcastle, and they're doing a very shit job of trying to negotiate to get Dan Ashworth out of Newcastle right now. So the people who run PFI, you've not got a good relationship as we speak right now anyway. But in terms of the people that run Al Nassr, the representatives Al Nassr, they've got a good relationship from the business that they did last summer when they sold Alex Tellers to Al Nassr. So there is a relationship there. They have already formulated contacts between the two parties. So if a deal wants to be done, there's a good chance that it can be done. It's just a question of how much do you get for Casemiro. And the ballpark figure that I've been sort of quoted around it is similar to the Fabinho money that took for Al Ittihad to get him out of Liverpool, which he was an over 30-year-old player. He was a 30-year-old player, 30-year-old plus players. In Saudi Arabia, the normal remit of it is, unless you're a top player, if you're going to come if you're over 30 years old, 40 million is almost the benchmark. And if you get anything more than 40 million, there has to be a reason why. So if 40 million is what they get for Casemiro, I think Manchester United would take it, personally. And they would excavate his wages off the bill, which is, I think they would end up saving around, I think it's around about £11 million. I think it's even upwards of 13, 14 million pounds per year on his wages as well. So again, you've almost got yourself out of a hole. So effectively, you get 40 million pounds for selling him, but then also you're going to save 14 million pounds for the calendar year as well, which in terms of PSR is very good.
That's fair, Tom. That's fair. So we'll bring in the show to then again, guys. So if you have questions, get them in. If you're watching the chat, there's obviously, from my concern, there's 40 people watching. If you have questions, final questions, so bring it in. We're beginning to bring the show to end. We want a final topic regarding what Sir Jim basically said in that interview, and his thoughts on that. But before we go into that, I think Sir has a question. So if you have any questions, guys, get them in. If I missed them, I apologize. But Soto says, Tom, outside the transfers, what does the 50 million investment actually bring to the training ground, and how much work will be done before pre-season?
Well, in terms of the bulk of the work's actually already begun right now. The problem was that they'd already had a blueprint in place before the season actually ended to completely modernise the training ground. They're not knocking Carrington down and rebuilding it. They're just modernising everything and putting the glitz and the glamour on it. When you think about in today's market, Leicester City's training ground was a 3-star rated in terms of Premier League facilities. They suddenly went from 3 stars to 5 stars. They sold Harry Maguire for £80 million and they built a complete new training complex. And they went from 3 stars to 5 with £80 million. So £50 million in terms of improving facilities gets you a lot. Even £20 million gets you a lot, to be fair, in football. So £50 million is almost, let's cap it off and let's make it perfect. Let's make every single thing perfect for people. So in terms of the investment, what it brings to the training ground, it brings a lot more jobs in terms of fitness and rehabilitation. So, for example, Manchester United will take on a lot more staff in those areas. They will also take on a lot more staff from predominantly media, the finance side of the club and the marketing side of the club, with Sir Jim Ratcliffe's new involvement of get people out of the homes and back in the offices sort of plan and theory. That's the way that he wants football to work. And some of those workers will work at Carrington directly. That's one of the things that he wants. But he wants that environment. He wants a proper working class environment. People in the office, enjoyment, bit of chit chat, bit of work banter, whatever it is. They want that bit of connection with people where they believe this club is means just as much as it does to them, just working for it, as it does the fans that ring up to say that they want to buy a ticket or they want to come and experience Old Trafford. They want to make it a family football club, and they feel like that's been lost under the Glazer family. And I think just probably to touch on slightly before we get on to the details of what Ratcliffe actually said, when he made the point about that Manchester United have got more accountants at Manchester United than football people, how many times for how many years have we said all of this about Manchester United?
True.
That there's more financial directors in Manchester United than there is football people.
True.
With football knowledge and football know-how and sense.
True.
We've said this for years.
True.
And what do you expect? Why do you expect United to be such a failure? You're running a spreadsheet, not a football pitch. That's the difference. But an improvement in facilities, for £50 million, to be fair, it gives you a lot. It gives you a stick to point at with players to say, well, we've got a new... did you know that we've got a new £50 million training facility being built? Oh, yeah, top class facilities, everything, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, do you need somewhere to stay while you find somewhere to live in Manchester? You can live at the training facility. There'll be because of conform anyway. There'll be accommodation complex, a part of the training facility as well. So for players as well, when they want to come in and maybe settle in with a family, in the short term, maybe for a week until you find somewhere to move in and actually live, it's a solution for players. Whereas before, United can't offer that. It's we'll stick you up in the Lowry Hotel in East Manchester. East Manchester, the Lowry Hotel, from comparison to where Lowry Hotel in Carrington is, correct me if I'm wrong, I actually think it's about a 30-minute drive.
Yeah,
for a lot of players, isn't great, but in terms of commitments for the short term, it works, and it only works for that period of time. But yeah, and to answer Solo's last part of the question, in terms of how much work will be done before pre-season, I would argue that 80% of the work, all of the main facilities and the main cogs of the training complex will be completed by the time the players get back from pre-season. So, for example, the new training ground, the new grass and blading for the pitches will all be done. The accommodation complex will probably be done. The rehabilitation centre inside the training facility will probably be done. The minor things that might not be done or fully completed might be just as simplistic of, the coffee machine, the office, a couple of the office buildings, or the car park might need new tarmacking, whatever it is. It might just be something as simple as that, as complex as that. But the main facilities for the whole training ground to function properly for player performance will be available by the start of pre-season. That's predominantly the plan. Obviously, things can go, at Manchester United anyway, we've got to hope that they don't go wrong. But with the way that last season went wrong and everything, I think, you could make an argument that something might arise or a problem might arise. But the one thing that they've been waiting for is the planning permission to come through to say that they can build and that they can modernise it all. They got the planning permission according to Form 2 days ago. So I would expect that work will probably start even now. We'll probably be starting now or probably Monday morning, which is probably the more running theory of that.
Thank you for that, Tom. Rob, I see your question, but I would know the final topic just regarding. So if we've got time, we'll address it at the end. So final topic, guys. So Jim Ratcliffe obviously gave essentially an interview talking about what he essentially inherited at Manchester United. As you said, we alluded to it in the chat about things like, he came and there was more accountants than there were football people. He made the comparison with Real Madrid and different things, So I just want to get to the bottom of that, Tom, and just say, your thoughts on the things that he said, but also, where is this coming from? What is Sir Jim's, vision and plan? How is he taking Manchester United forward? Obviously, stuff like, when he's saying it's going to take 3 or 4, transfer windows, is he saying, is that including the January transfer window, or is he saying that it's going to take 3 or 4 seasons to get Manchester United where they want to be? I'm sure a lot of United fans aren't going to be happy with that. What do you think?
I think that probably the perception is that he came in on a dodgy deal, where he just wanted in by whatever means necessary. He wanted in, whether it be minority and he had no control. But the one thing that he always campaigned for is if he bought in, he wanted control of the football club. That's the one thing that he always insisted. Fine, I won't buy it all off you, but I want to run it. If I buy in, I want to run it. I want to have influence. I want to have control. He's got the control that he wants. He's got more control than what he actually asked for. He wanted football operational control, which is the playing squad, the manager, the transfers. But suddenly, when you run a football club, you realise the football operations and the commercial operations, suddenly some of the ways that you run the club go hand in hand. So suddenly you almost have to dive into a pot or into an area of the club that you don't have control over. So they ironed out some of the details of it and the agreements of it. And the Glazers gave them massive, more controlling influence over the commercial side of the club as well as the football operations. Effectively, we're just going to sit in Tampa Bay and Miami, Florida. You run the football club, Jim. You wanted it. We're going to give you all of the control over it. Just make sure we make money. That's effectively, just make sure we don't go bust. Worst case scenario. That's effectively what they've done. So with Jim Ratcliffe now, he's got control of the football club. To be fair, when he went into Nice, and I'm going to be very harsh here, he promised that football club and he promised them fans the world. He said we're going to be a Champions League club by 3 or 4 transfer windows. He said that we're going to compete at the top end of the table with PSG. I'm going to put massive spending in terms of the playing squad, and I'm going to modernise all the facilities, training facility, and I'm going to modernise the stadium. Out of all those things, G, he's only achieved one of them, and that's modernise the stadium. Nice are not a Champions League table club. They're not. They're not fit for it. They've not been in the Champions League since he's been there. He's not competed in terms of the spending powers. He's not invested large amounts of money into that club to try and boost them up the league tables. He's not on par to competing with PSG in France. That's the third thing. And the training facility, in terms of French Ligue 1 standards, is actually rated 3-star out of 5. So, in terms of facilities, it's not great either. And he didn't make improvements there, which he promised upon doing. The only thing that he did that he kept his word by was he modernised the stadium. That's it. I think he made a cash injection of about, I think it was about 100 million euros into the stadium, which, to be fair, for Nice's capacity of that stadium, it does quite a lot. That's the only thing that I will say. Apart from that, he's underwhelmed. He's undelivered those supporters and those fans. And when he's coming to Manchester United, and he's done a lot of interviews here, and I'm going to give a bit of a personal opinion here. He's done a lot of interviews. He's done a lot of talking, but I've only seen a portion of action, and I'm starting to smell a bit of entitlement with what he's starting to come out with and what he's starting to say. The Newcastle thing, Newcastle legally are well within their rights to hold Dan Ashworth for 18 months for the year and a half of his contract, unless Manchester United pay up. They're well within their rights to do it. But the way that he's speaking very entitled. Almost like, well, that helps nobody. It doesn't help Newcastle. It clearly doesn't help us. I can't make influence. I can't make changes when I've got all these people on gardening leave. I've got Omar on for 6 months. I've got Dan Ashworth on for a year and a half. But I'm prepared to wait until however long it takes to get the right people in place. When he's saying this about 3 transfer windows, G, these 3 transfer windows, he's going to go in there with arguably one of his most important people not there for half of them, which is Dan Ashworth, because he's not going to be released for a year and a half. So out of the 3 transfer windows, you can make an argument. 2 of them, Dan Ashworth's not going to be a part of. Which is his sporting director, which is I would say his most important person in terms of recruitment of players. And if you don't recruit the right players, you don't get anywhere in football. That's an issue, and that's a problem. And like I say, when he made and I think an even bigger problem and an even bigger question has to be said for what you made the comparison to with Real Madrid, which was that Real Madrid have spent 300 million euros. They've got the best stadium in the world.
Net, I think it was. I think he said,
net spend. Sorry, net spend. They've got the best. They've got the best facilities in terms of training complex and facility. They've got the best stadium in Europe, supposedly. And to be fair, I would actually agree, and I think it is. I think it is based upon what they've done with the place and what they've actually done with the stadium and the facilities. And they've got. You could argue. I think he was actually being generous. I think he was actually being harsh when he said they've only got 5 players that are worth over £100 million. I actually personally think they've got more. I do. I think they've got more players that are worth over £100 million in that squad.
Yeah,
Manchester United don't have 1 player that's worth over £100 million. No. I don't disagree with what he said. I don't disagree to say that we don't have a stadium that's even comparable to the Bernabeu in the state that it's in right now. The training complex is, again, not rated up there in the top echelons of Europe. Certainly not with the technology in robotics that Real Madrid's facility has. So it's almost like he's almost agreeing and saying what fans have wanted to hear for years. But the difference is, Jim, people are going to start to smell bullshit at some point until you actually make some action. Okay, you're getting Barada in at the end of July. Right, that's fine. We've waited long enough. You'll get your proper person who's going to run the commercial side of the football club in Barada. But he also knows how to run the football operations, certainly from a negotiations perspective. So you're going to get one of your cogs in the wheel. You've already got Wilcox here, Barada and Wilcox. They've worked hand in hand before at City, so there's a good relationship there. The final one, in Dan Ashworth, you're not getting for another year and a half, which I think is really disappointing. And when you're saying that you need 3 transfer windows, if you're going in there without one year, I would say the most important person to influence those transfer windows in your sporting director, I'm massively concerned. I am massively concerned about it because I don't want you coming out in 18 months' time and saying, well, until Dan gets here, we need 3 transfer windows.
It's not going to work. Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
He said what you said. He said what he said now. He can't take it back. So at the end of the day, he's done a lot of talking. He said he's going to build a new stadium. Okay. By the end of next season, you should at least have a template or a blueprint, a video, I don't care what it is, and show Manchester United fans what this new stadium is going to look like. You said that you're going to modernise the whole external part of Manchester, with the in correlation with the Industrial Revolution. Okay, show us what that's going to look like. Again, the training facilities, G, the way that they've done it, they've actually shown us what it's going to look like. That's what we want. We want to see what improvements are going to be made. Exactly the same thing that he said, we're going to move differently in the market. We're going to recruit players based upon who have the right character, in the right environment. And again, he spoke about Erik ten Hag as well, in saying that he's a good coach. But he's never said this before. He never said this before. He never even quote phrased Erik ten Hag after the Manchester United won the FA Cup final in his personal statement. He never quote phrased the manager, the coach, Erik personally. He never thanked him. But then all of a sudden now, he's a good coach. It doesn't. These things just aren't adding up. They're not adding up. And to be honest with you, if they got their way, Thomas Tuchel would be the manager of Manchester United right now. That's the one that they wanted. They went and met him. They didn't agree on everything that they wanted, both ways, and they mutually parted on any agreement, any terms, anything, and they pulled away from it. And then they went over. He flew a couple of people out to Ibiza and said, "We need Erik to stay desperately." But again, the market of the way that we're working right now,
That's
he
sorry.
has to change this.
Tom. This is a very good point by Jarvis. I think he said when he said we don't have a player who wants 670 million. As even said, I don't. I even don't mean it's. I even mean is it the wisest move to say that publicly when considering potential sell players like Rashford? I mean that is true. Like if you're wanting to offload players quickly, is it really worth saying in public we don't have anyone worth 670 million, but we want to get, for example, someone like Sancho, you might want to encourage a bidding war and maybe get his price. But if you said that we don't have a player worth 60, 70 million, then essentially what you're saying is that if we get any offer for any player at United for less than 60, 70 million, we'll take it effectively, which might be the case, but at the very least, for certainly players like Sancho, maybe even to a certain extent Greenwood, maybe not Maguire, but there are certainly players that we have that potentially a bidding war could be created to push the price to play up. But basically, by saying that, you're almost sort of getting rid of that, So yeah, I don't necessarily think that was the wisest thing to say, to be honest. Even if he wants to make the point about, putting Madrid, but just because I'm going to wrap things up. So just quickly, just final thoughts, Tom, on just when do you think? This is a final question. When do you think Manchester United will basically, I guess, make their first signing? Do you think?
Realistically, I'd probably say we're in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
If all being goes well, G, you could see Branthwaite, or you could see. I'd probably say more Branthwaite because he's not at the Euros and it's not as difficult to get a connection personally with him to gauge where it's at. You can contact the guy straight away personally. You can contact his agency, obviously. They're already negotiating with Everton right now, so there's a good relationship and a conversation there. So it's not an issue. Zirkzee is a little bit different because you can't contact him personally because he's in a private camp with the Netherlands. But as soon as Netherlands probably, exit from the Euros, if they don't go on to the latter stages of the tournament, he will become available to speak to. Of course, he's going to take a bit of time away from football, probably have a vacation, spend a bit of time with family and friends. But you can contact people when they're on holiday. They're a phone call away. You contact his agency, you get Zirkzee's private number, you contact his father, whatever it is, speak to whoever it is, and you get hold of him. Right, it's Todibo from Manchester United. Can we arrange, we'll come out and whereabouts are you based on holiday? Right, I'm on the next private plane out there. Can we meet you? We'll have a bit of brunch, we'll have, whatever it is. And you can almost make that personal relationship. But I think in terms of them moving for players, they're moving a lot more efficiently for players. They're moving, the one, like I said before, the one thing that Ten Hag wanted when he first came to Manchester United was he wanted players to be signed before pre-season so he could work with them and he could mould a style of play with them. But that wasn't what's the word? It wasn't written in his contract. Whereas the agreements that he has with Ineos right now, it's written and it's penned up. That's one of the agreements as to why he chose to stay on at Manchester United. Just as much as they wanted him to stay on. He didn't take much convincing, but he wanted a couple of things written up to say, well, if I do stay on, this has to change. And that's one of the things that he pointed out was, I want players in before pre-season. And that's one of the things that I think you can clearly see now when they're targeting players like Branthwaite, Zirkzee, that they are making those steps and inroads to get players in before the window. Obviously, you're not going to do all your business before, pre-season starts. There'll be the odd few players that will, probably come in. But I think you can make an argument if you have two new players on a plane going to America, with all the rest of the squad at the same time, it's better than having 3 players fly over at different points and different times in that pre-season tour. And they've almost got to make friends and everything while they're there. While you can make friends when you're on a plane. You're with the group and everybody's almost under the same hymn sheet. We're all under the same hymn sheet. We've all been here at the same amount of time. We all understand each other. That's the one thing that you want. And you need a harmonious football club and a harmonious camp. But at the end of the day, I would say, all being well, if Everton drop their asking price, United will go up that slight bit more, and they'll meet at what they believe is the fair value price of the player, which is around 55 to 60 million pounds. If Everton don't go and aren't prepared to drop their asking price in and around that region, forget about it. But if they do, I think Manchester United will agree a deal with him, with Everton. Personal terms, I don't think it will be that much of an issue, to be honest with you. And I think you could see Branthwaite sign me in 2 weeks. But if Everton don't offer the asking price, they're going to go elsewhere. They're not waiting around.
Thank you for that, Tom, and thank you for the for the show, guys, and everyone that participated. Really, really appreciate it. Obviously, a lot of transfers that we took over, and I suspect that things will ramp up in the coming weeks, as Tom said, and obviously we will hopefully be live to cover it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate. Oh, RSV, your comment. Oh, you got a question. Oh, okay. 1 minute. Okay, 1 minute, and then okay. Riz, how many players United sell this window? One last question, because I definitely have to go. Realistically, just because I've not seen you for what RSV, so we'll address it. Realistically, how many players will Manchester sell this window? Also, should we trust Ineos and not consider it? So I think we'll just focus on the first question because we kind of addressed that somewhat in the stream. What would you say, Tom, as a quick answer? Like, how many players basically do you think Manchester United can sell? Considering we talked about Greenwood, Rashford, etc.
If I had to make a personal guess, out of the players that we spoke about, I'd say I personally think Casemiro will go. I don't know. My guess would be to Saudi Arabia, but you know, there's nothing concrete there yet. I think Greenwood will be sold to whoever it is, most likely at this moment in time, Juventus. I think Sancho, I think there'll be a solution there. I don't think he's coming back. I don't think he'll come back to Manchester United. Right now, as it stands, I think there's more chance that he'll probably go back to Dortmund on loan, unless United drop their asking price to something that Dortmund can realistically afford, and they'll buy the player. But when they can't afford £35 million to buy Ian Maddison, who they've had on loan for the whole season, and then suddenly they can't afford £40 million for Jadon Sancho, clearly they're in some sort of financial irregularity, so they can't offer the prices that they want. Those three, I think, are most likely right now to go out of all of them. But I do think there will be more. If they get the sort of money that they'd want for a player like Lindelof, they'll sell him. If they get the sort of money that they want for someone like a Shaw or Aaron Wan-Bissaka, they'll sell them. They will sell them because they look at the age profile of these players and they think, we can get better value in the market selling these players for the money that we get them. For example, the best way that I can say it is, let's say you got 35 million for Shaw at left back. Could you get, with that 35 million pounds, a younger player who maybe has a lot more better potential than Luke Shaw for the future? I would argue that you can, because I see players like Tyreek Mitchell at Crystal Palace. I see players like Rico Henry at Brentford. There's a lot of players that at a young age that have a lot more development in them, that have far less injury issues. That's the example that I'm using. So that policy that I was saying before, G, about 1 in, 1 out, that's the phase that they're going down. So if they sell a player, if the budget opens up for them to buy a player in that position to replace them, they're going to do it. And they're going to try and do it with a player that they think suits the style, the principles of what they want as a character for the football club, but also is the right sort of player for the environment that they're trying to create right now.
Thank you for that, Tom. Thank you for the update, and hope that answers your RSV. Hope that answers your question. Thanks everyone for watching. Really, really appreciate it. Remember, if you're new to the channel, to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter, We United X. We're also on Twitch and Instagram and TikTok now, so please follow us there. Links in the description. Make sure you shout out and follow Tom on Twitter as well, at Tom Journalist, one who obviously gives us so much insightful news regarding Manchester United, and I'm sure we will be doing and covering more United stuff as the transfer window goes on. Have a nice day, everyone, and cheers. Peace, peace, peace.